Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, the Birmingham City podcast, brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick and I'm joined by our Blues reporter, Alex Dicken, the morning after the night before the Hollywood derby, or as I was hoping it would catch on, the Hollywood Bowl, but it doesn't seem to have done, between Blues and Wrexham, a 1-1 draw, as many of you will know. Alex, how was it last night? A late return home, lots of work to do, and a difficult game for Blues, I guess, right?
Yeah, very difficult game. I'm still trying to work out who scored the Blues goal, to be honest, Brian. I've seen many different versions of events. But yeah, a hard-earned point, really, on the road. Blues weren't particularly good going forward. They were solid enough defensively. As we're probably going to come on to in greater detail, Christoph Klar and Ben Davies headed absolutely everything that was thrown into the Blues box in the second half. And at the end of the day, a point against a team that is, 5 points below Blues in the race of promotion, and obviously Blues have those two games in hand. I think it was more important not to lose that game, and Blues came out with a point. So I think we can all be quite happy.
Yeah, and hopefully you escaped third-degree burns with your pie problem, did you?
Yeah, I shouldn't have told you this. Brian's referring to the pre-match food at Wrexham. You were all given a pie or a sausage roll. I ended up sneaking 2 pies, but you had to eat the pies without a fork, which, if anyone's ever done it, I can sympathise with you, because it is a very, very tough experience. I did a great job on my first one, and then took the second one up to the stands, and that one didn't go so well, but I didn't make a mess of myself, at least.
First world problems, Alex. I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're home safely. Let's move on to the game. Let's start. Who scored Blues' goal, or who do you want to give it to?
I don't know, to be honest, because I think we want to give it to Lyndon Dykes, don't we? Because that would be his first Blues goal in the league.
It's still down officially as Dykes, isn't it?
It is, and I'm not quite sure how, because from the replays I saw, Dykes headed it back into the danger zone. It was probably on target, fair enough, but it was never going to go in. It hit May, or May flicked it with his hair, his long hair. Laird, I think, got a touch because he tried to claim it. And then obviously ultimately it's gone off the back of George Dobson, hasn't it? He has got the biggest touch. So a combination of the four, they can all claim it if they want to, but I think they're probably going to have to give it to Dykes unless someone takes it off him at this stage.
I've got to say, if I could give it to someone, I'd give it to Laird, because I thought he had a good game last night, and I think he's starting to make meaningful contributions.
He is.
I mean, it's a Dobson own goal for me. The ball is going in a totally different direction by the time it's hit Dobson's back. So yeah, that for me. But if Ethan Laird wants to mount a claim for it, I'm totally there for that. He did put his hand up and sort of look round, and then nobody was sort of having that at all. And no. Sort of put his hand down and went, "Oh, right, okay." He
was giving it very briefly there by one. I think he was on Sky. He was giving it briefly, but most have now gone with Dykes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Lyndon Dykes has scored officially his first league goal for Blues, and well done him, because it was a good performance from Dykes, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I thought Dykes played really well. I actually expected him to come into the 11, mainly because of the physical battle. Obviously, it gives Blues that extra kind of 6'2", 6'3" body on set pieces, and he was really effective on set pieces. And Wrexham didn't heed the warning of the first one, did they? Because he got in, stole in at the back, headed, and it hit a Wrexham arm, and the referee didn't give a penalty quite early on. But then next corner Blues had from that side, Mark Leonard, same delivery, Lyndon Dykes back post, and Blues scored from it. And I thought, in general, his play was pretty good. Looking at the numbers on who scored this morning, he actually won 9 aerial balls, which is the most of any player on the field, even more than Christoph Klar. So he served his purpose and did the job that Chris Davies wanted from him. And I thought it was one of his better performances for Blues. Not that he set the world alight, but it was, in terms of recently, I think it was one of his better games.
Yeah, I think what we saw from him was that physicality that maybe you look at someone of Dykes' stature and you sort of automatically want, maybe unfairly. He's not the most physical sort of target man, number 9 player in the world. But as you say, he was putting his body on the Wrexham defenders and winning flick-ons, winning headers, holding the ball up. He just snatched. He had one good chance in the first half, which he just snatched that. Not entirely dissimilar to the Lincoln position when the ball's sitting up in the D. He just sort of pulled it wide, didn't he? But other than that, well, I was impressed with Lyndon Dykes, and I wonder if he's just starting to benefit from a little bit more game time. It feels like he's playing more. Alex, you mentioned before we came on about the Clara Davis partnership. Tell us why you were so impressed with those two.
I mean, I'm always impressed with them, to be honest. The way they defended as a partnership in the last 2 months has been excellent. You know, the number of goals Blues have conceded, while that has been, the defensive partnership has been, you know, way reduced on what they had at the start of the season. Davies is pretty much kind of a no-thrills defender, no nonsense, does the job. Not particularly stylish in the way that he plays. Christoph Klar is similar, maybe with a little bit more ability on the ball, I think. I think they complement each other really well, and they're both clearly up for the battle of dealing with the aerial onslaught Wrexham threw at them in the second half. Both won lots of aerial balls. Clara, I feel like he always kind of makes it his business to go and attack everything that comes into the Blues box. He seemed to love the physical battle with Ollie Palmer, who was, you know, a little bit kind of old school in the way that he played and roughed Clara up at times. And Davies as well, for that matter. But yeah, I think Clara as well as a leader. I've been surprised by how good a leader he is, and as a person, he's one of the kind of Blues players who always makes himself available, always kind of speaks to you around the training ground, very professional. You just get a really good vibe from him, and it wouldn't surprise me at some stage. I know he's captained the club a lot this season, but yeah, God knows what's going to happen with Christian Bielik in the future. But you know, if he was ever to leave the club in the next 2 or 3 years, it wouldn't surprise me if Christoph Klar is a future captain of the club, because he's that well thought of, and he does kind of give off leader vibes.
He does. I like the fact if there's ever a confrontation, he's usually one of the first to arrive, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, I think I saw him in a previous game. He was warming up as a sub, and somebody had a go at a Blues player, and Clara was sort of fighting his corner, even as a substitute warming up. So yeah, I think Clara's been an outstanding signing, and I do like the balance. You know, the left right. You know, of Davis and Clara. Be really interesting to see where Phil Neumann fits into this going forward next season. I would be in favour of trying to sign Davis on a permanent deal. I think he could play Championship football, you know, with some comfort. The way from what we've seen so far this season, still plenty of the tank. Yes, he'll be, you know, the wrong side of 30, but Clara Davis Neumann for me would be a real sort of foundation stone to build around. So yeah, sorry, go on. Sorry,
Bryce. A fan mentioned actually when the Neumann thing was all kicking off about how great it would be to have Neumann, Clara, Davies and Bielik as 4 centre-backs who kind of just slot in and out of the system and are all really comfortable playing the system in different ways. To have those 4 options in the Championship would be probably better than anything anyone else in that league is going to have, or at least up there with anything anyone else is going to have. So I'd, like you say, Brian, I'd be looking to sign Ben Davies as well and kind of get that left-footed option too.
Yeah, indeed. We shouldn't let it escape our notice that Blues scored a goal from a corner. Which, how many times has that happened this season? Is that six now? 6, right? Okay. Which puts them towards the bottom end of that stat.
Yeah, four teams have scored fewer. Interestingly, Chris Davies in the last couple of weeks has spoken about kind of wanting to improve at attacking set pieces. Blues are actually quite good at defensive set pieces. Their records, you know, stacks up. So I think they've conceded 6 as well. So again, they're like they're evens, and there's only like 5 or 6 teams that have better defensive records. So it's kind of been about improving the attacking set pieces. They scored from a set piece late on at Swindon in the trophy, and obviously against Wrexham. So somewhere that they definitely can improve, because you look at the players they've got. We mentioned Clara, Ben Davies probably should do more in attacking set pieces. Christian Bielik, when he's on the field, he scored once this season, I think. Lyndon Dykes again. They've got some, even, you know, Willemsen when he plays as well. So they've got some real kind of powerhouses, 6'3", 6'4" players. they need to probably start punching their weight in on attacking set pieces, and they haven't so far this season. I think that is something that Davies is definitely aware of, but also from speaking to Christoph Klar after the game, it's something the players know that they have to be responsible for as well.
By and large, it feels like the delivery's been pretty good. It doesn't feel like delivery's been a problem. Cochrane puts in some good balls. Leonard picked out players quite well last night. Peck's taken corners as well, hasn't he? There are several corner takers, but then I suppose you can't, if they're not making the first contact, you can blame the players in the middle, or you can say, well, actually the delivery wasn't right. We weren't expecting it there. So it's a bit easy to say unless you know what the plan is, if the delivery has been good. But by and large, it's felt like the shape of the balls into the box has been decent. They quite often stick it into the 6-yard box, don't they? They get people around the keeper and somehow don't just quite get that first contact.
Yeah, they've mixed corners up as well. The last few weeks, been quite obvious what they've been trying to do. Like they tried a lot of near post corners against Swindon before scoring from a near post corner right at the end. They tried that in a couple of games before that as well. And again, it was quite telling at Wrexham that every time Mark Leonard went over to take a corner in the first half, it was deep to Dykes.
Deep, yeah.
So it worked. It resulted in a goal. So. I think Jonathan Grounds probably deserves a little bit of credit because I think he leads a little bit on set pieces as well. So the improvement, is clearly falling under his remit. So fair play. They are actually addressing it and doing better on set pieces, because last season it felt like Blues had this issue, but at least last season they conceded a lot of goals as well, didn't they, from set pieces? So at least they're not doing that this season. Yeah,
indeed. You wouldn't have seen this, but Chris Davis in his Sky interview was asked about the set pieces for last night, and he said that they'd noticed that Wrexham man mark rather than zonal mark from set pieces. So what they were able to do is they're able to get blocks on, and therefore get somebody free. Most commonly, Lyndon Dykes at the back post, which then sort of caused the issues, and that's exactly what happened from the goal. So, as you say, it does feel like they're starting to make progress on that front. We've put here, what did we make of Wrexham? What were your thoughts? I tweeted at halftime, rugby 1, football 1. I thought Wrexham were, I'm going to say overly physical. It's only overly physical if the referee says it is, isn't it? And we'll come on to the referee, I guess, in a sec. But I thought there was some roughhouse stuff from Wrexham in that first half. But in the second half, I thought they were absolutely excellent. They were physical, but it didn't feel like it was the same kind of sort of tackles from behind and elbows here and there, and the Ollie Palmer running through the back of Ben Davis and catching him in the back of the head. There was some stuff there that I didn't like. But second half, fair play to Wrexham, they should have won the game. I thought they were excellent. I thought the way they got the ball wide, got it into the box very quickly, they had the physical presence in the box. And that being said, as we go back to the fact that Davis and Clara did really well, as did Ryan Alsop. So Wrexham overall.
Yeah, Phil Parkinson's teams have always been quite physical, haven't they? They've always been of that mould, and I was surprised first half by kind of how aggressive they were, but again, it probably played into the crowd. The crowd, I can vouch because one guy was sitting behind me and absolutely loved it every time one of the Wrexham players went through a Blues player. So they played into the crowd first half. They showed, like you said, Brian, they showed more quality second half, and they actually got the ball wide. And that was kind of the picture I had in my mind of Wrexham before we went, that they're a team that likes to get the ball wide with Ryan Barnett and James McLean on the left and get crosses into the box because they've got decent quality in wide areas and they've got fairly physical centre forwards, and that's how it played out second half. And that's when they looked like I actually saw them and thought, I can see why they are in the position that they're in this season. Just Blues defended really well and kept. When Stephen Fletcher came on, I was a little bit concerned because he scored 3 late winners in his last 4 home games, but and there was one chance, wasn't there? I think when the ball's coming from the left and Ben Davies got the slightest contact on the ball with Fletcher waiting to score behind him. So I think the credit has to go to the Blues defence and also Ryan Alsop for making saves when he was called upon.
You can absolutely see why Wrexham haven't lost at home, can't you? And why they've got this habit of scoring late goals. They are a real handful when that ball goes into the box, and credit to them for that. As I said, though, there was some stuff in the first half which I didn't really like, and I thought it should have been handled better by the referee. Alex, you've put the referee on the running order.
He wasn't the best, was he? Or he didn't have the best. He didn't have the best evening. There were two penalty appeals for Blues, probably in the first 6-7 minutes, weren't there? So Alfie May's appeal for the first one, I didn't really see it. He's kind of glanced ahead of Ron, and he was claiming that it flicked off an arm. I didn't really see that one. I don't think there was enough there, to be honest.
No, I don't. I did see it on replay. Don't think there was enough there.
The second one, where Dykes headed it, it's hit an arm. Granted, it's only a yard or two away, but the arm was up in the air and it was in an unnatural position for me. And if you see them in Premier League games, they're normally given. And I was kind of, I'm not surprised that it wasn't given, because who knows, the referee might not have even seen it. But and obviously we don't have the benefit of VAR in League One. But that was a poor one for me. And I saw the foul on TGH for the Wrexham goal from where I was sitting. So I was quite disappointed the referee didn't see it, to be honest, because Palmer's come through the back of him. I think the reason he didn't give it was because TGH, to his credit, tried to stay on his feet and continue to play. He didn't quite go down, did he? Kind of half went down and carried on. So maybe the referee wasn't convinced there was enough contact, but there definitely was enough contact, and that for me was a foul.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually the Sky replay showed that the Dykes claim for the penalty, it just flicked off Dan Scar's head and then onto his arm.
Okay, that makes a difference.
Yeah, so it did make a difference, but to the naked eye, it absolutely, it totally looked like an arm being outstretched and the ball hitting it. So yeah, I mean, if the referee spotted that, then absolutely fair play to him, because it was only the slightest of touches. But yeah, I came away from that game at half time thinking, how has only one player been booked?
Oh, I know. Did the first booking come at the beginning of the second half?
I did it as well. So yeah, right. Okay. So at half time, some of the stuff that was going on that pitch, for no players to have been booked and for only one player to have been booked in the entire match.
Yeah.
What are we going to say about that? Are we looking at League One football there, or are we looking at overly lenient refereeing? I think I'm inclined to go with the latter. Yeah,
I'd agree. There were a lot of challenges first half that could have resulted in bookings for both teams, really. It felt quite stop-start at times, and I think there was only a minute. Was there a minute added on to the end of the first half? It didn't feel like that much football was played, so I was surprised by that as well. But I don't think it was the most. I mean, compared to September's game between the two teams, I don't think this one was particularly entertaining in terms of quality. But the neutrals watching on at home probably would have been entertained by the feisty nature of it, at least.
I think Wrexham fans would have been entertained because they were on top in the second half. Make no bones about it. Wrexham deserved to win this game with that second half performance.
Yeah, Brian, the Wrexham fans behind me were definitely entertained.
Yeah. Right. What are we thinking about Blues' attacking performance overall? There was very little to go at in that second half because Wrexham was so on top.
Yeah, I was probably left feeling a little bit underwhelmed by the forward play. There wasn't really a great deal of quality from any of the players in forward areas. Kind of in possession, Dykes made a huge contribution out of possession on set pieces and also, aerially. But Alfie May was kind of on the fringes of the game. There was maybe the one chance where Anderson, as soon as Anderson came on, he went down the right wing, didn't he, and flashed a ball across that May just didn't connect with, and he probably should have. Jay Stansfield was really on the fringes of the game. Couldn't quite get into it. I know Phil Parkinson said that Clearworth had the better of him afterwards, and Blues probably just didn't give Stansfield the right service, did they? To kind of get him into the positions that he needs to be in. So that didn't quite work. Scott Wright, for me, it's difficult to judge Scott Wright because he's been out for so long. He's coming back and he's clearly not on full match sharpness and match fitness. And he has looked really rusty in his starts. And we're now all of a sudden going to start to say maybe Scott Wright should be a super sub because he was playing that role so effectively before he got injured. when in reality he's probably had to play because Blues haven't had the options out wide in recent weeks because of injuries. And, it's been a necessity to play him. So he's probably not given the best account of himself and could probably do with a half an hour here and there until he builds up his fitness and then can kind of get back into form. But I thought he struggled as well, to be honest. He gave the ball away initially in the build up to the goal, didn't he? So I suspect, given how strong Keshi Anderson looked when he came on and how well Anderson was playing before he got injured, I suspect Anderson will probably reclaim that position for Huddersfield.
Yeah, he looked very bright, didn't he, Keshi, when he came on there? There was automatically sort of more direction and more drive. And as you say, within a couple of minutes of him coming on, there's a ball flashing across the box. I think Stansfield suffered against Ryan Barnett, having to track him back quite a lot in that left-sided position. He seemed to get sucked back quite a bit. Jay took a bit of stick, didn't he? And Parkinson, as you said, and Max Cleworth sort of mentioned the fact that they'd done a good job on a good player. Really nothing fell for Jay last night. Do think Blues, they missed that little bit of ingenuity with Williamson. They missed that sort of direction and quality. And I think we said this about Keshi Anderson last season, that the fact he sees pictures and he kind of knows what he's going to do before he gets the ball. And we saw that straight away last night, and they've missed that in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So Anderson and Williamson really have, their absence has left the front line looking a little bit prosaic.
Yeah, I mean, Stansfield's he's a striker playing out wide, isn't he? And he obviously wants to get into shooting positions. He's not, got the guile of Williamson. Williamson is probably the one player in the Blues team actually that kind of has the ability to pick out a through ball, play in tight spaces and play those little intricate passes and set chances up. The other Blues players don't really have that in their game. So he's been probably a bigger miss than we thought he would be, because he wasn't playing that well in the months prior to his injury. But yeah, you can see why he plays every week now, can't you?
You can indeed. Which brings us to the weekend ahead. Blues have obviously got a weekend off now. It would have been lovely to have gone in with 3 points and sat back and watched the rest of the pack scramble around to see what they can do. As it is, we'll take the point, the way things worked out. So we've got the games going in. Huddersfield are at home to Bolton, and Wycombe are at home to Northampton. Just want to point out now that the Blues are 15 points clear of fifth. I think it's Barnsley that are in fifth. So it does feel now that they've sort of escaped the pack, and there's, if it was a race, there'd only be sort of 3 teams chasing them there, really. And they're well clear. They've got a handy lead in first position as well. Just in Wrexham in particular, it felt like if Wrexham are going to catch Blues, they needed to beat them last night. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I'm going to throw up the league table now for people watching on YouTube. So, I mean, I've got it down as a 4-horse race as well, Brian. So, Wrexham 5 points. 5 points below Blues, and obviously Blues have those 2 games in hand. So, I mean, those games in hand are at home to Stevenage and Leyton Orient. So, obviously 2 decent sides hoping to challenge the playoffs, but you would expect Blues to beat both of them. So, if that becomes 11 points, are Wrexham going to make up that in the second half of the season? I highly doubt it, given how much of a kind of drop off in form it would take for Blues for that to happen.
And also the fact that Wrexham would need to start making inroads away from home as well.
Well, exactly. And their away record is pretty bang average, isn't it? Their home record's exceptional, and that's the reason they're in the running, but their away record is pretty poor, whereas Blues have the second best home record and the second best away record in the league. So I think if Blues avoid defeat to Huddersfield on Tuesday, I think the automatics are theirs to lose, to be honest. I think it's really important not to lose that game, because it would just give Huddersfield that little extra incentive. And I do eventually think Huddersfield will probably come through for second, which is where you would have probably had them at the start of the season behind Blues in terms of quality of squad and depth. And they've added well this month as well.
Just going to say that, they've added well. They've taken arguably Bolton's best player, haven't they? In Dion Charles. So I think you're probably right. Wickham have obviously lost their manager. Wrexham, it felt like they dropped 2 points last night. Given the way the game panned out, I think they'll be looking at they should have won that game. And it started to eat into Blues' advantage because, as you say, those 2 games in hand, 6 points doubles the lead effectively. Huddersfield, Bolton, Wickham, Northampton. Northampton are on a poor trot. I think they beat Burton a couple of games ago, but they're not doing particularly well. You'd expect Wickham to win that game, but Blues will go to Huddersfield top, and then, as you say, if they can escape the John Smith Stadium again with a draw is fine. But I given the way that Blues played Huddersfield and they were such a good matchup at home, but that was a real heavy 1-0 victory, wasn't it, for Blues that day?
It was, yeah. I mean, Huddersfield were very good first 25, 30 minutes, and then Blues kind of got to grips with their shape and system and completely dominated them. It was 1-0, but it was probably it could have been 5-0, 4 or 5-0 quite easily with the chances Blues missed. I think Alfie May and Jay Stansfield might have missed a couple of very good chances apiece that night. So Blues well worthy of that win, and it would be a real statement to go there and win. But like you say, Brian, I mean, I think a draw would be an excellent result and would keep Huddersfield and Wrexham at arm's length and put Blues on course for automatics. I don't think Wickham are going to maintain the run of form they've shown over the second half of the season, especially with the managerial change. So I think a point's would be hugely valuable. And I didn't think I'd be saying I want Blues to go to Huddersfield and get a point after April, because that was the last thing we wanted then. But I think it would be a really good result this time round.
Yeah, indeed. Just a quick sort of fitness check for whoever might be available or might not be available. Obviously, Anderson's back in the squad. He could potentially come in to start. Bielik's pretty much recovered now and back in the squad, isn't he? Peck and Iwata are the 2 that, last night's game might have been different had Peck and Iwata played. Any hope in either of those, do you feel, playing against Huddersfield?
So David has given the impression that Pecky's behind Iwata. So I think he's probably going to be struggling for the game on Tuesday. Iwata asked about after the Wrexham game, and Chris Davis said he's taking it day by day still. He doesn't want to risk playing him and then making the situation worse. So it feels like they might have to go into that Huddersfield game without Iwata as well, unless he makes some serious progress over the weekend and early next week. I feel quite confident going in with Mark Leonard and Taylor Gardner-Hickman, but I do feel like maybe Christian Bielik might be needed in midfield just to give one of them a breather, probably Gardner-Hickman, because he's played a lot of football recently.
Yeah, and let's not lose sight of the fact that Blues are played on a Thursday night and Huddersfield are playing on a Saturday. Exactly. So there'll be more recovery time for Blues as well. Williamson won't be fit, will he?
No, I wouldn't think so. He's ruled him out for a few weeks, and that wasn't a few weeks ago, so it will at least, probably be this game as well.
Yeah, the movable feast that is a few weeks.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Alex, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it as ever. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate your attention. Please comment or like or hit subscribe or follow. Does help us massively. All that remains is a keep right on from both of us.